The fact is, viewers, it's a sweeping reform. It will have far-reaching implications as well. To decode it, I have two people. Shiv, our executive editor, is with me, and he's going to break it down in terms of the pros and cons of Agneepath and the Agniveers, which would be now enlisted into the Indian Army. I have Siddharth Zarabi. He's going to get us into the investment part of it and break that down in terms of, there is a lot of criticism coming in that angle as well. You know, Shiv, there are a lot of pros as well to this particular scheme. Would you help break it down for us?
The pros are that the intentions of this entire scheme, Preeti, are extremely noble, and they are very important. The fact that the Indian military is unmanageably large, half of India's vast defense budget goes into pensions and salaries, has to be reduced. These are things that can't be ignored. They have to be acted against. Committee after committee for decades together have tried to right-size the Indian military because they are, so unwieldy. They're not agile, they're not lean and mean. But there are concerns about whether cost-cutting is an experiment that should happen with the military. The military is unlike any other organization. It's not just any other institution. It deals with national security, sovereignty, the border. There are many societal issues as well that come as a fallout. So I think one of the big concerns, Preeti, as far as Agnipath is concerned, is whether this is a reform that is necessary in the larger perspective, but whether it has enough of a safety valve, whether it has a rollback mechanism, whether all points have been thought through before its actual implementation.
Before we cut across to Siddharth, I'll ask you, what are the biggest glaring issues with this scheme?
Well, the issues with this scheme is the esprit de corps, about whether people will be fully committed to the military if they join it only for 4 years, whether 4 years is enough, whether 8 months of training is enough to create a fully combat-ready soldier. And remember, Preeti, veterans believe that it takes up to 6 to 7 years to create a combat-ready soldier. Are you able to tunnel down that and telescope down that entire timeline to create soldiers? What kind of quality of soldiers will that actually be? There are people who simplify it a little to say, look, the military is not a picnic site. To experiment with exposing people, to the uniform, and that's what the advertising actually says. But I think I must repeat once again that the goals that are being aimed for, Preeti, by Agnipath are real goals. Those are goals that must be achieved one way or the other, but it is contentious whether Agnipath is the way to achieve.
I'm going to cut across to Siddharth right now. And Siddharth, ultimately, yes, a reform, to try and usher in reforms in the Indian Armed Forces, it's time that it happened. But ultimately, the main reason for this reform, for Agnipath, is cost-cutting, if we look at it. Is it feasible, viable?
The numbers first really, and if we look at it, and Shiv and I have been discussing this, it's very clear that the annual average recruitment is being cut down by roughly 1/3, taking 46,000 as this year's announcement and 65,000. But Preeti, this is the post-COVID army recruitment plan. Really, for 2 years it was frozen. Effectively, a division plus or thereabout strength is being reduced. So I think that headline number, which countless committees have spoken about, a bloated workforce, so to say, that's being taken care of. The tenure, the tour of duty concept, the return on investment, and to train these soldiers 8 months to a year deployment, and would you send these soldiers to Kashmir? These are questions, operational questions, which the experts know. One quick comment before I hand it back to you, Preeti, and this is to do with the defense pension numbers, and I have those numbers right away. If we take the last 4 years, including the current financial year, 1,13,000 crores 4 years back in financial year 20, that went up by 21,000 crore to 1,34,000 crore. Shiv, that was the highest pension bill in the last 4 years. I'm talking about defense pensions, which is therefore not part of capital expenditure. And that has gone down to 1,16,000 the year after, the previous financial year. For the current year, it is projected at just under 1,20,000 crore. So defense pension liabilities have been brought down even before Agniveer. And that's the big point. Is this going to be a long-term thing? Is this post-COVID army being utilized as a chance? This discussion about how wars will be fought. But please don't forget, India's borders, messy neighbors.
And I'll quickly ask you one quick question. The expenditure or the liability, we talk of expenditure. When we talk about the Indian Army and Shiv, when all our border issues, our internal security issues, should that be looked as expenditure or investment?
No, there's no doubt about it. Like I said in my opening point, cost cutting is not something you should be looking at in the military in terms of just the pension bills and things like that. The money that's poured into the military, is life and death.
Right.
You're an army kid, Preeti. You know for a fact what this actually means. It's not an emotional response. Most veterans believe that you can't have a return on investment way of looking at what you put into the military, and that's one of the reasons why when you're looking at pensions, and Siddharth made a very good point when he said that the pension bill has actually come down even before Agnipath was announced and implemented. It has to be a variety of different reforms. It can't be one big reform. And especially when you're dealing with, not the administrative aspects of the military, but the actual cutting edge, the soldiery of the military, the people who are going to stand right there.